this Burnout Extra, I'm going to show you how to use a pressure tester to test the pressure in your cooling system throughout your engine. And these pressure testers you can get at a lot of automotive parts stores. Honestly, they're worth getting if you need to test if you have a leak or a crack in the block, something like that. It's worth it to just buy one and try and test the pressure. So on this example, we're going to use Tarpey's 76 Camaro. You've seen this all over the channel if you watched the Burnout show yourself. And right now, we had an issue previously with an internal coolant leak within the Chevy 350 that Ryan rebuilt. And so at this point, we've actually taken it apart and then consulted a few experts, got their opinion on what to do and where the issue might be. And from there, we've slapped new gaskets on it. Ryan has worked hard to put this thing back together on the top end. And now it is time to actually test the pressure to see, like I said before, if there's either a crack in the block or some other problem that we may not have known. And the pressure will either give us an inkling of that or supposedly hold the pressure and maybe it will be okay and the engine will no longer have that internal coolant leak that it had before. So right now, there's actually no fluids in the engine or the cooling system, which is okay for the engine, but we do have to fill the radiator and the cooling system part of the engine. It needs to be flowing with liquid. So that's step number one. So if you don't have either coolant or water, if it's nice out, if you don't have that in the system, you shouldn't put the pressure test to it. Ultimately, you'll just be pumping it for a while. It might work, but it's just a waste of your time. So right now, we're going to fill the radiator with water, which we will eventually drain out after I'm putting actual coolant. But for now, water is fine while we're checking the pressure. And like I said, we will hook up this pressure tester to the radiator cap and ultimately pump it to test the pressure with the engine. So first step, I'm going to add some water to the radiator. So if you're following along, do that first. There's actually enough coolant in the system, so much that filled up to the cap. So right now I'm squeezing the hose to get the fluid through and turning the pump by hand. Because that's what you do on Burnout. At this point, we've added enough water right now where we can hook up the pressure tester. However, if your engine is not like ours, because ours doesn't have oil right now, so we don't really want to crank it over or run the engine at all. However, if you're in this position right now, it's actually a good idea to crank over the engine because that will get water through the cooling system entirely. Things like the top hoses and inside the engine itself will have water pumped into it, where right now we might have to do a little bit of extra pumping with the pressure tester just because we don't have water cycling through the entire engine. Once again, the only reason why we're not doing that is just because there's no oil in the engine. We'd rather be safer about it and just have a few more pumps with the pressure tester. But at this point, once you've topped off the coolant or water, you can put on the pressure tester with the right fitting. If you got a kit with multiple fittings, chances are there will be different styles that you can attach to your car, as well as a few adapters of certain sorts if you need those as well. Like I said, for the most part, it's pretty universal. So this one here actually fits the 76 Camaro, no problem. And so I'm gonna hook this up now, and what you need to do is once you get the cap on tight, you want to make sure it's on there tight as you would put a radiator cap on normally. And just like an air pump for a ball, you would pump this and then watch the gauge. So I'm going to do that now and show you that as well. The number one thing you need to remember when putting on this pressure tester is the cap needs to be tight. So if there's like a little hole, you're just going to be pumping and not doing anything really. It shouldn't take that many pumps if your system is full of water. That's why we put the water in or the coolant in. If you're checking this on a normal car, then chances are if your radiator has fluid, then it really won't take that many pumps, like maybe no more than 20 at that point, before you even just receive pressure on the tester. The way I kind of found out that I didn't have pressure on it quite yet was I had it hooked up at the cap, and then I actually squeezed this hose to release and get pressure, and I heard air coming out here, so I knew the cap wasn't tight. I then had to readjust that and then pumped it a few times, and sure enough the pressure came in, and then on the gauge I could see the pressure go up. So for this car specifically, we're pumping the pressure in the cooling system up to 15 psi. That's relatively what it should be at, so we're just going to test it at that. And honestly, that's middle of the gauge, so if you're not really sure, I would use either 15 or something slightly less that is not too much pressure for your system. But ultimately you pump it up and it obviously gets tougher as you go. Right here you can see I'm just about under 15 PSI. I'm probably about 14 or 13 there in that color, that light blue color. And once again, at this point, you want to pump it up to about where you want it, which we want it around 15, and then just let it sit for a minute. And this is where you want to be awfully quiet and listening for any leaks or breaks in your system. If you don't hear any breaks within the radiator, however, the pressure is going down, chances are it's something either to do with gaskets on the engine or it's a crack in the block itself. However, if the pressure holds on the gauge to the point where it's not going down over the course of, let's say, 5-10 minutes, then that means your system is pretty much solid. We actually realized after listening that there is a break right here in the cooling system. So on the radiator itself, if you do have a break, chances are you'll be able to see water or coolant dripping or oozing out at a very slow rate. Sometimes you can see bubbles, and like I said, you can hear that. So if you kind of listen around and put your ear up to the radiator, once you notice that the pressure is slightly going down, you'll be able to find that spot. Other than that, yes, if the pressure goes down, you have some sort of problem with your engine, whether it be gaskets or the engine block itself. However, if it holds pressure and doesn't go down, then your cooling system is essentially good to go and you've successfully pressure tested it and it's totally fine to be run with the engine. I do want to stress that if there is an external leak within your cooling system, you will either hear it or see it. So you will be able to hear it bubbling out or hear the air releasing somewhere in the external part, or you will be able to see it, whether it's bubbles, water, or something like that. One or the other, you will be able to hear or see it. If it's internal and not external, by external I mean within the radiator, maybe the hoses, the clamps, attachments, things like that. If it's internal to the engine, you won't be able to either see it or hear it, and you will simply be relying off of the gauge just lowering in pressure, because you can't see or hear inside that engine. So if there is a leak, like a crack in the block or even a gasket that's not fully sealed and there's water spewing out or bubbles spewing out there, you won't be able to see it, you won't be able to hear it, you will just have to judge it off of the gauge. And at that point, it's pull things off and maybe look at the gaskets from there. Like I said, external, should be able to see or hear. Internal, you just have to watch the gauge and judge it from there. At this point, that's all you need to know for testing the pressure in your system. Regardless of the car, this is exactly how you do it with a hand pressure tester on your cooling system. That's gonna be all for this video. Be sure to check out our memberships. We just recently released those on our YouTube within the past few months. So be sure to check that out. There's some pretty intriguing stuff and goofy things that go along with the channel. Hopefully this helped you either find the hole in your system or confirm that your system is actually closed and you'll be fine to run your engine. And stay tuned for more helpful videos like this. We'll be doing more and more as the channel grows. So once again, thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.